Welcome back to our study of Philippians chapter 2, and today we'll be in verse 17. But there are very few verses in the Bible that you can just pluck out and get a message from it that God intended us to receive it. You can do that in Proverbs. A lot of the Proverbs are just one-liners, and you can just look at that one line, that one verse, and get a message out of it. But in most of the Bible, you need to look at the context. What is the complete idea of what's being said to have a full understanding of it? And this is true with verse 17 of chapter 2. First of all, it's a continuation of what Paul was saying in verse 16. But we're going to go on back to verse 14. Do everything without grumbling and arguing, so that you may be blameless and pure children of God, who are faultless in a crooked and perverted generation, among whom you shine like stars in the world, holding firmly to the message of life. So his encouragement on how they need to live their lives. Then he says in the last part of verse 16, I can boast in the day of Christ that I didn't run or labor for nothing. Verse 17, but even if I am poured out as a drink offering on the sacrifice and service of your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. So Paul has spent a good bit of time in this particular chapter. He's spoken about the gospel, what all Jesus did for us, and how the Philippians and we need to live our lives in response to the knowledge of the gospel that we have. And he says, and if you do this, you're going to make me happy. And I will know that all of the time and effort I've put into teaching you and loving you and training you and encouraging you and praying for you will not have been in vain. Many of us know what it's like to teach and encourage and pray for someone, and it seems like we've gotten nowhere. It's frustrating. But we also have, most of us, hopefully, had the experience that we've taught and trained and encouraged and loved on and prayed for someone, and they have become a blessing in our lives and in the lives of others, and especially in the kingdom of God. Paul says, live according to the way I've been teaching you, and I'm going to be so happy. And he says, but, verse 17 now, even if I am poured out as a drink offering on the sacrifice and service of your faith, I'm glad and rejoice with all of you. So what does he mean being poured out as a drink offering on the sacrifice and service of your faith? Well, this is going to require going back a little bit into chapter 1. And in the first paragraph past his introduction, Paul talks so highly of the Philippians, how much he loves them and how he prays for them, how he's grateful to God for them, because of their faith and their faithfulness and the way that they are living out the things that he has taught them. And he encourages them to continue doing that. Then in verse 12, he talks about the fact that he has been and is being persecuted, but it's for the sake of Christ. It's not for nothing, but it's for the gospel, for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of the kingdom of Christ. And so he spends a little time encouraging them in that fact, that when we share the gospel with others, we're going to get some blowback from it. It's not always going to be pleasant. And we're going to face some problems because of that. So he says he knows that, and it's okay. In verses 21 through 25, he says, whether I live or whether I die, it really doesn't matter. Let's read these verses, 21 through 25. Paul says, for me, living is Christ, and dying is gain. Now, if I live on in the flesh, this means fruitful work for me. And I don't know which one to choose. I'm pressured by both. I have the desire to depart and be with Christ, which is far better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary for you. Since I'm persuaded of this, I know that I will remain and continue with all of you for your progress and joy in the faith. He says, I don't know which I would choose, whether to live or to die, because they're both good in their own way. It's better to die and be with Christ, but I know I have a purpose here, and it's to help you to grow in your faith. And he says, so I'm good with that. And then in verses 28 and 29, he acknowledges the fact that they're going through some struggles too. He refers to the opponent that they're having to deal with. And then in verse 29, for it's been given to you on Christ's behalf not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for him. So he acknowledges, I'm suffering, I'm being persecuted, I'm good with this, because I know it's for the cause of Christ. And it's for your blessing that I'm still here, so I can continue to pray for you and love you and encourage you and help you to grow in your faith. He says, but I know you're struggling. So let me say some words of encouragement to you. And that's the point when he begins sharing the gospel, telling them how to live according to the gospel. So now what is he saying? He says, on the sacrifice and service of your faith, the Philippians had a strong faith in God. And because of that faith, they were living out their service to God. They were living the way Paul had been teaching them to live. And as he was encouraging them to continue to live. So they were serving. They were servant people. And we have other scriptures, other letters where Paul has written about the Philippians and praised them. And we even have the letter in Romans that Jesus sent to the church in Philippi. And it was nothing but praise for them. These are good people. They're servant people. And because they are servants in the kingdom of Christ, they were having to make some sacrifices. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual sacrifices. They had to deal with people who were opposed to them. And they were suffering in some kind of way because of their faith. And he says, even if, now Paul talking about himself, even if I am poured out as a drink offering. All right, now what does that mean? In the Old Testament, there were animal sacrifices, which were burnt offerings. A sacrifice was always an animal sacrifice. And it was a burnt offering. And then there were grain offerings. They're never referred to as sacrifices because there's not animal life involved. These grain offerings served a different purpose and were done in a different way. But with both kinds of offerings, the animal sacrifice and the grain offerings that were being given on the altar at the temple or the tabernacle to God, there was an additional offering that they were to make, which was a drink offering. And this was always wine. And what does wine represent? In the New Testament, we're very familiar with wine as representation of the blood of Christ that was shed for us on the cross. And that Jesus pulled these ideas together in the Lord's Supper with the bread and the wine as his body and his blood. And so much of the Old Testament is a pattern of what happened in the New Testament and what is happening in the New Testament. This drink offering represented a blood sacrifice. And Paul says, even if I'm poured out as a drink offering, even if my blood is shed, even if I have to die, because I am continuing to pray for you and love you and encourage you and teach you the gospel, if for the sake of Christ I have to die to continue to encourage you to remain faithful, it doesn't just simply not bother me. I'm happy. I rejoice I am glad and I rejoice with you. Why is there rejoicing? Because they were being counted worthy of suffering. God says He's not going to give us more than we can handle as long as we hang on to Him. So when we're suffering, that means God counts us worthy. He's saying, I know that you're strong enough to deal with this by my power and my grace. So hang on, because I trust you. You are worthy to endure this suffering for my sake and to my glory. So Paul says, even if I have to die, even if my blood is shed, because I am continuing to encourage you to continue to sacrifice and serve because of your faith in Christ, I can rejoice. All my life this has been theological for me. Okay, this is what it says and this is what it means, yada, yada, yada. Okay, got it. Move on to the... No. In today's culture, in our country, we've heard about it in other countries. We've heard about it, the persecution of the Jews in Nazi Germany and in other places around the world. We've heard of persecution. In the country where my parents did mission work, my father came home one time. He had been out in the countryside, because a young lady wanted to be baptized. And so he baptized her, after which her parents beat her mercilessly and drove her out of their home. And this is in a supposedly Christian country. There's persecution everywhere. And we're finding it now in our own nation, where teachings of Christ are being removed from the internet because they don't go along with the standards of those who provide the forum. There's more and more mockery and derision toward Christianity, and people accusing us falsely. But we can't let it bother us. We can't, yes, bother us in that it's sad, and we need to pray for these people that they will come to their senses and see that the life of Christ is so much better and so much more glorious than what anything the world can offer. But as for us personally, we need to rejoice. Rejoice that we are counted worthy to suffer for the cause of Christ. And if we're not suffering, if we are not facing any kind of opposition or persecution, we need to evaluate our lives and see if we are living out Christ as we should be. Do people even know that we're Christians? Do they know what we believe? Can they tell by the way we dress? By the way we walk? By the things we discuss? By the way we interact with other people? If we're not suffering, if we are not facing persecution, if we are not personally and individually experiencing some kind of kickback from Satan and his demons and the people of the world who are under his influence, then maybe the devil doesn't think he has anything to worry about. So if we're not being opposed or ridiculed or derided or persecuted in some way, we need to evaluate our Christian walk. Because maybe we need to walk a little taller and shine a little brighter and glory and rejoice when persecution and derision and scorn and mockery do come our way. And we need to have this attitude of Paul here in Philippians 2:17. Even if we are required or called upon to suffer, even to the point of bloodshed, because of our sacrifice and service in the name of Christ, then we should rejoice. We should rejoice because he's counted us worthy. may we always remain faithful. So let's evaluate our walk with God today and make sure that we are shining the way we need to shine, that we are being the light we are to be, that we are being the salt that we are to be to those around us. God bless you. Walk strong.